Hello and welcome to Raider HQ After Dark. I'm your host, Raider. And in this video, I wanted to kind of talk about it's a separate video than my Lieutenant Dan video, but now I want to talk about the VFW because I just got done watching one of their podcasts. I guess they do podcasts. And I watched one of their podcasts about their interpretation of that congressional meeting and all the glad handing that's going on in their little podcast and stuff. And I mean, I should upfront say that I have nothing against the VFW. I think that their advocacy in what needs to happen for veterans benefits is basically not in tune with what should happen on a personal level. That's like just me being a veteran. And it's not their fault. They don't know. Like they have nothing to do with the process, so they don't understand the process. So they don't know what benefit would actually help veterans, like advocating for the long form narrative. They don't know what the long form narrative is because they have no idea what is going on with veterans benefits other than you file and you hopefully get, let's make it to where filing is easier. That's their job. They file claims. That's fine. I don't expect them to advocate beyond, making sure that it's easier to sign the form. I have no expectations beyond that. But in this podcast that they did, it's number 53. I just want to point out the fact that the VFW, if they're going to advocate and they're going to kind of challenge people that say negative things or want to take away our benefits, they need a little bit more threat assessment because they want to pretend like Lieutenant Dan doesn't exist. Lieutenant Gade doesn't exist. Like they will not say that man's name. They are either scared of him or want to pretend like he doesn't exist. And they keep talking about the Washington Post and the Washington Post, the Washington Post. Well, let me tell you something. The Washington Post is written not in good faith. It doesn't actually, like, it's easy to refute. It is not like the Washington Post itself is not a threat to veterans benefits because it can't even format an argument. The people that are there don't even know how to research any evidence to even be taken seriously. However, Lieutenant Gade, and I'll just use his name so that way if the Washington Post watches this, they're like, we didn't talk to any Lieutenant Dan. No. Lieutenant Colonel Gade, let's use his formal title historically. He is actually a threat to veterans benefits. And the reason why, if you understand it, like what the process is, if you don't just look at this as a knee-jerk reaction, the people who are sponsoring Lieutenant Dan are trying to get a figurehead that can be used to soften up public opinion and provide legitimacy and validity to their particular narrative and ulterior motives. If you pretend that the figurehead doesn't exist and he's allowed to gain traction, then you're ignoring the advocacy that you're trying to do. If you're trying to put this thing to bed, then you need to focus on what the bigger threat is. And the bigger threat is Lieutenant Dan. Because Lieutenant Dan at least comes in with a cockamamie, half like wrapped in pleasantry thing of trying to get people jobs and whatnot. But the goal of Lieutenant Dan is to take our benefits away. Just take them away. The Washington Post goal is to make veterans look bad and they shouldn't get money, right? But the getting money part is in a contract. So that's not going to happen. The people that are chasing the Washington Post around are silly. Like, I don't understand it. Like, that will go away because it just takes 2 seconds to refute them. You don't take them seriously. But the Lieutenant Dan, nobody wants to talk about it. I watch their podcast. They want to pretend like he doesn't exist. The boogeyman. He's the boogeyman. He's the Baba Yaga for them. I don't understand why they don't want to talk about him. Like, if you pretend, like if you get gangrene and pretend it doesn't exist, what happens? Right? Pretending that this man doesn't exist. You need to challenge Lieutenant Dan at every turn. What is going on, VFW? I left a comment going, I'm disappointed. You guys aren't actually If you're trying to advocate, why aren't you refuting him? Why didn't you refute what he said in the meeting, in the hearing? Why didn't you refute one word that he said in the hearing? What are you doing? I mean, and then y'all are just laughing and having a good time that you're just challenging the Washington Post. Great. I mean, but your threat assessment's off. The true threat here is Lieutenant Dan and the people who are backing him. That's the threat to veterans benefits. It's not made in a genuine way. Like, the people at the Washington Post believe what they're saying. They believe we shouldn't have benefits. They believe that we shouldn't be getting that money. They believe that. But the people that support Lieutenant Dan, they don't believe that. They have an ulterior motive behind it. They don't believe that veterans would be better, emotionally better if they got a job. They don't believe that. There's no belief behind their actions. It's a means to an end, right? I can believe that the Washington Post people believe what they say. They're wrong, but they still believe it. That's conviction. The more dangerous one is the person that will say and do anything to make the means justify the end. And we need to be cognizant of that. Like, there's not many people here that are treating Lieutenant Dan as dangerously as he should be treated. I mean, he's the sidewinder, figuratively. That he should be treated with, because he comes in with a little bit of genuineness, right? We're trying to legitimize what we're taking away. We're trying to legitimize the process. That's clever. That shows intelligence. The Washington Post hasn't shown any intelligence in their process. Not one bit. And that's just me being me. Like, I don't have a degree to say that they have a cognitive issue. Or maybe I do. I don't know. But they're not they're just, that's an what do you want to call it? What is it called? It's an opinion piece. Like, they're doing an opinion piece about how they feel about something. So the Washington Post is fine to have their beliefs. They just have a big platform to shove it out there. But the Lieutenant Dan situation, no. You guys cannot. You cannot allow the Blue Falcon to gain traction or legitimacy. And ignoring him doesn't take away the legitimacy. You have to directly refute him. You must meet the challenge head on. We should all be tearing apart Lieutenant Dan's argument, because Lieutenant Dan's argument is the most dangerous. But anyway, this will be a shorter video. I'm going to try to keep it under 10 minutes. But I just watched that, and I'm just slack-jawed. I don't understand the victory lap that the VFW is taking, because they're beating up on the Washington Post. It makes no sense to me. I'm like, if you have had any kind of threat assessment, your spider sense should be tingling about Lieutenant Dan and why they chose him. How the heck did he get a seat at the table? Who's pulling those strings? The Washington Post is just doing what they do, right? They're not doing anything nefarious. They're just spouting their unpopular opinion. Fair enough. God bless them. But Lieutenant Dan's thing, that's more insidious. Like, there's some negativity there about, like, how did he get a seat at the table? His message is to, like, he's not qualified to come up with his plan. Who came up with his plan? I mean, some of you in the comments will say, it's this, that, or the other. But we need to be focused on that, because there are many hands involved in that process. Oh, I know, Luna. I'm sorry. Luna's upset too. She thinks that everyone should be focusing on the Blue Falcon and not on the Washington Post. So if you had to take anything away from this message, is do not be complacent about Lieutenant Dan. We have to be, the Blue Falcon must be addressed, or else bad things will happen under our noses. The Washington Post is out in the open. It's just distraction. It's distraction and setting up Lieutenant Dan's. Oh, well, let me fix it then. They're saying that there's a problem. Lieutenant Dan set up to fix the problem. And then the congressman didn't go to the Washington Post and say, hey, look, I think you've got some really good ideas. Let me do that. No, they went to the Blue Falcon and they said, hey, look, send us your proposals. We're interested in that. That's what you should be scared of. That's what the VFW should be concerned about. I do not understand the cognitive dissonance here where they had a stroke and just they're pretending that the most dangerous thing is not dangerous. And it scares me. So, and they can disagree with me. Fair enough. But I'm going to tell you, the Washington Post won't take away our benefits. They can't. There's no way. Congress and the Washington Post ain't getting a seat at the table for Congress. Congress, everybody came out and they openly said the Washington Post statements are false in their introductory statements. Fair enough. But in the live, in the moment situation, Lieutenant Dan was allowed to speak unopposed except for Duckworth. And let me tell you, silence is complicity. You condone it. If you don't challenge it, you're condoning it. So you need to challenge it. Everyone needs to be challenging Lieutenant Dan. Do not let this message gain traction. Anyway, that's about all I got for you today. Raider out.